The foreigners came, there were two resources that were here. The gold, number one, but us, because they realized that we were good, we could take the heat and the work.
Yeah.
So there's actually two resources they came for.
Okay, so let me say it was more of demand, because you realize that around the 1500s, the main demand was gold, because now the new world had not been properly explored by the Europeans. And basically it's like the Europeans depleted all the gold they had. And initially the Europeans bought gold from the North Africans. But the Europeans realized that, North Africa produces no gold. The gold had its source further south of the Sahara. And there was another problem. The Europeans could no longer do business with the North Africans. It got to some point, two religions were fighting for dominance. So as I was saying, it got to some point, two religions were fighting for dominance, Islam and Christianity. And you realize that geographically, North Africa was dominated by the Arabs, the Muslims. They control the Mediterranean Sea, and as we all know, at some point in time, even in history, the Arabs got hold of Jerusalem. Now they had to form the Crusaders to liberate Jerusalem from the Muslims. So there was this conflict. Now the Europeans could not use the Mediterranean Sea to India. They could no longer buy gold, so they were now obliged to come to West Africa themselves and have a direct source to the gold. Yeah, so they came to gold, but it got to some point, yes, now the Europeans were now exploring the New World, especially South America, and realized that, the soil was really fertile. They discovered other minerals like silver, crops like tobacco, sugar, corn, and all that. So now, it got to some point, around the 1700s, the demand for gold in Europe dropped, but rather the demand for sugar, tobacco, alcoholic drinks, and all that increased.
So they needed slaves.
Exactly. So they needed more labor on the plantation farms to supply Europe with the raw materials it needed. And unfortunately, this part of the world was chosen for some reasons. The first reason was Africans were strong enough. Secondly, Africans were skilled farmers. We had a skill in cultivating rice, which the Europeans had no knowledge of. Apart from that, geography also played a role. Because when you look at South America, Brazil, and West Africa, we're on the same tropic. So the weather here in West Africa is the same as the weather in Brazil. So now the weather favored Africans even than Europeans. So unfortunately, this part of the world was chosen for the human labor needed across the Atlantic Ocean.
And then we're living there. We deal with it every day.
Exactly. So now the forts and castles the Europeans constructed along the coast of Africa were turned into slave castles and fortresses. And interestingly, after the Atlantic slave trade, another thing started in Africa, colonization, which was even a bit worse than slavery. You lived in your own country where you had no power on your natural resources and on your human resources. So I can also say for a fact that, Europe is what it is today as a result of this continent.
All the wealth,
the whole
Exactly.
world is because
Exactly.
of,
Right. And
So-
still.
Yeah, so as we move along with the tour, I will tell you how even Africa was shared among the Europeans,
yeah.
where the pieces went to. I can take the opportunity and tell you now.
Okay.
You see, the thing is this, the Europeans were actually fighting among themselves to have a piece of Africa. They realized that, the fighting was not doing them any help. So they decided to come together, discuss, and share this piece of cake among them peacefully. In our history books, we call it the Berlin Conference. 1884, 1885, they met in Germany, Berlin, and started a cutting. We know where some of the pieces went. The Germans had Togo, Tanzania, Namibia, Cameroon. The French had Gabon, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, you name them. The whole of Africa went to the Europeans, with the exception of one country, Ethiopia. And, in all, though there are a lot of resources in Africa, but there's one peculiar place that had a lot of resources than most of the African countries. Do you know that area?
Congo.
Congo, yeah. You know, name all the mineral resources you know in this world.
It's there.
It is there in Congo, in larger quantities. And even if we are all using mobile, you can ask Samsung, you can ask Apple, they will tell you. If their business is thriving, it's as a result of Congo. There's this component in our phone that the raw material is mined from Congo, cobalt. Yeah, but it's still, Congo remains one of the poorest countries in the world. You know King Leopold II, I can equally equate King Leopold II to that of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, because he killed more Africans.
Exactly, the atrocities he committed in Congo just to enrich Belgium. The same thing happened in Ghana, South Africa, just name them. So that is, and it's still the same thing is going on. Nothing has changed over the years. Nothing has changed, but I think that the packaging is different, but it's still the same process. Yeah, a lot of, you see, Ghana, we have gold, we have oil, but interestingly, Ghana only enjoys about 10 to 12% of its oil wealth. It's the same with the gold. You realize that about 95% of foreigners own the big gold mines. At the end of the day, everything is taken out of the country, as it was some years ago. All right, I want to show you something on the hill. Up on the hill, can you see that fort? There's a fortress on the hill.
Yeah.
So the British built that fort to protect their turf from any attack. So they had their soldiers spying all around, so in case of anything, they would just signal them. When they were signaled, the guns or cannons, they got them ready to repel anybody who tried. And apart from that also, when you come down, you find some churches. Interesting, these are some of the first church buildings this country, Ghana, had. To your right, you find the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church. It was built around 1835, and left from the fort, we have the Catholic. Exactly, and across the castle, across the street, sorry, there's a church. That is the Church of England, or the Anglican Church also. So at the center, we call it Chapel Square. And interestingly, we move on to the male dungeons, and you realize that before the churches were built outside, one of the churches was located on top of the male dungeons. I'll talk to you about that. Let's get there. Let's go this way.
I want to know you.